Who's hitting that like button?
What's going on? Where am I? I need an adult.
Right. Well, we just jumped software.
Yeah, we tried something new. We'll see if it works next time.
We tried something new. We failed. We're back to the old thing again.
We were taught the lesson. Don't try new things.
Never try anything.
Never. Ever.
At least not 15 minutes before the show is supposed to start.
Right?
I was still running around the neighborhood. I was like, well, running is a fast exaggeration.
I was about to say, were you really running? Walking briskly? Yes.
At our age, we're not running.
Yeah, no. The knees, man. The knees can't handle it.
In fact, I told myself recently that I was going to start running. I actually tried to do a little bit of jogging a couple weeks ago, and my legs are still punishing me for it. It's just no, not your age, sir.
I made the mistake about 10 years ago, thinking I could pick up running. But not only did I make the mistake of thinking 10 years ago that I could do it, but I tried to pick it up in the winter. And you know how cold the air is, right? Have you ever tried to breathe heavy?
Yeah,
it
sucks.
Like, oh
it
my
hurts.
God, burning lungs. I think I made it partially around the block. And by partially, I mean I think like maybe 3 or 4 houses from my house before I was like, "What is happening? What's going on in my chest?"
The memory has stuck with you of your 10-minute attempt at winter fitness.
Yeah.
I remember I long for the days when I was, just before I hit my 20s and I was bored at home. I'd go for a 14-kilometer jog. Like, what happened to that kid? God, I miss him.
Suffocated him. You drowned him in energy drinks. That's
Right.
Yeah.
No, actually, at my peak of use of energy drinks, I was still like at some of my skinniest body forms because that's when I was a chef.
It's also because it was all you were living on.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it healthy.
Like
That's not a thing to look back on like, the healthy days of my youth when I used to live on nothing but cigarettes and energy drinks.
right? Exactly. That's when I was my skinniest, when I was a smoker.
Yeah.
Right.
Something to be proud of.
I remember when I was a smoker, I was so skinny. All right. I think we've rambled on about being old long enough. It's time to start talking about Heroclix, I guess.
It's okay if we can remember anything to talk about because we're old.
Yeah. So yes, I'm joined this week by Tom and by Mike. It's the old man crew here. I mean, we have one young guy on the entire channel, so I don't know what that basis is.
and every year he gets older. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, but we don't get any younger. That's the problem.
Says you.
And of course, I've got new digs behind me because I did a massive renovation of my house. So hey, there's board games behind me instead of toys.
New digs in this case means same place, slightly different orientation of
same
crap.
place, new shelf. Right behind there is the coolest game cave in the world, though. It's like a little hobbit hole. Anyway, we're here to talk about Heroclix. I did do a little bit of Heroclix, a lot of Heroclixing this week, as a matter of fact. I'll kind of regale of the tale. It's on video. It's on the channel. In this past week, I did have my next round, or my round 5 game of the Critical Clix Kilted Classic, and I got absolutely murdered. Part of the situation, me and Scott actually recorded a podcast after the fact. Scott had built a team that he tailored to beat WWE, and this was the round I thought, you know what? I'm going to play WWE. Guess what?
Excellent.
Best time in the world. Also didn't help that probably one of my top 2 characters on my team decided to critically miss with his first attempt at attack. And critically missing off your first click for a WWE character, you might as well just throw him off the map. just done. Because they're going to get shot. So, yes, they could see John Cena almost immediately. Macho Man held up one hell of a fight, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to get me a win. Because go ahead.
I was going to say that I thought it was pretty good design on his part to play that Vange Whedon to be able to trigger off the auto damage to an adjacent character thing. Because he could see your Ric Flair because he wasn't on top click, and then use that to then spill the damage onto Shawn Michaels so he had a target and stuff. Really smart building on his part. Like I said, bad luck to be in this particular setup, but there is something to be said. Like, I've built teams that were designed to counter something, and then it did not do so. Like I've designed a team and then failed.
Yeah.
Or worse, you never get a chance to play against the thing that you're so ready for.
Yeah, that happens most of the time.
Yeah,
Like, good on Scott for building something that actually worked to its purpose.
To that degree, I kind of remember when I put Hellcat on my Nationals team with the anticipation of having to use it as a trick against Mystique, and then they changed the rule on the way there, and then I had nothing to replace it with, so I was like, whatever, I have Hellcat as an ID card. But yeah, so I got a thorough stomping. It's on camera with Scott Crampton. Scott Crampton's he's a really good player, and it was one of those situations that, Scott had a team that wasn't set up to lose to mine. And as a result, he was able to beat me. So I've got my next game within the next couple days. It will be on the channel at some point. I'm going to try to get it out there. My next opponent is DJ Riggin I believe he's on the Shots Fired podcast. I am trying something incredibly insane this round, and it's either going to completely blow up in my face or work.
This should have been around for WWE. DJ is a huge fan of wrestling.
He
and
is.
A wrestler, if memory serves.
And that's part of the thing I'm concerned about this round. I mean, for one, if the both of us played WWE, I'd have to play with single universe rules, which means I'd have to learn those. Because you can shoot each other with the objects if you decide to pick them up and throw them at each other, because the WWE team building doesn't work in single universe the way it usually does. Or the grand entrance isn't really a thing, right? You actually have to play Heroclix with the WWE guys. Yeah, it's weird AF, as the kids say. But I'm going to try something incredibly off the wall this round. It's worked for me in the past in this tournament, so good luck to DJ. Hopefully we can get our game sorted out soon. I've also been running tournaments over at my local store, Dolly's. This week we had one of our bigger turnouts with 8 people, all in masks. Nobody's complaining about it. It was run very well. Thanks to everybody for all their patience with everything. WizKids, can we start getting some monthly OP kits starting again? Because we're almost out.
Oh man! Oh man!
We had an event with the Fantastic Four, and we already Mole Mans have been given out to our players. So
I need someone for Mole Man.
I was very jealous. I was partying with my family on the Sunday. Got together for like a little outdoor birthday party gig, which was a lot of fun. But I also would have tried to be at Dolly's otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a vehicle, I would have definitely been.
Yeah, we're actually approaching that limit. We have a hard limit of 9 players we can play in or could play in, because there's the limit of 10 people in a group, and I count as a person, and the store owner plays. So,
Right.
We're hitting that limit or close to it. So if just kind of a heads up, if you're in the area and you want to play at Dolly's West, sign up in advance, because I will not let you play if you're not signed up.
Always use the win, man.
Yeah.
You should always use the win. It's the easiest way to sort of get yourself in there, just in case. They can always remove you if you're not going to show. You know what I mean?
It's also like there are lots of people who decide whether or not they want to sign up for a tournament based on the idea of there being other people there. So if you know that you can play, then sign up, because then somebody else is more likely to sign themselves up.
Absolutely. And one observation I made this week is believe the hype about Super Skrull. Player played the Super Skrull and didn't get attacked too often. And it didn't, almost nothing stuck to it. So if you would get past the shape change, the Super Sense would take care of it. If neither of those work, the Impervious would take care of it. It was insane.
I actually got to thank you, Emily, again for messaging me yesterday and saying you had time and you were down with doing some practice, because Mike is not quick on the Roll20. I'm trying my best. I'm an old dog trying to learn new tricks, and we played 2 games over the course of about 3.5 hours.
That sounds about Roll20.
Oh no, the best is that I'm so glad there's not a podcast going on, like the camera looking at me as I'm in like this going, I can't see the blue dot to rotate it, Emily. I can't. Where is it? What? let's have it. Yeah. So I become an 80-year-old man for some reason with the computer. I don't know why. But thank you to Emily for playing those games with me, for helping me start to get smoother and smoother with it. I chose to play a Skrull team. And yeah, I had 2 Super Skrulls on there. I was only playing them at 50 points each, and they're still crazy good at those 50 points. Yeah, like it's nuts. Pretty much, I found that Invisible Woman is almost like the 99.9% of the time go-to, especially if you're playing on a hindering map, because stealth, right? Stealth is a thing, and stealth is a thing that helps you a lot. So, believe the hype for Super Skrulls for sure.
Yeah.
And the funny part is, in our 2 games, over the course of our 2 games, I managed to win both games. I won map each time because I had a +8 Skrull team, and I only rolled Shape Change successfully once over the course of 2 games, and that's at being able to roll it at a 50%, so a 4 to 6. Because everybody had Skrull and Shape Change top dial, and so 4 to 6 is, and I rolled 1 successful Shape Change out of 2 games and still managed to win both games. So you don't just need Shape Change rolls with those guys. They do a lot. I mean, all of a sudden,
Skrulls are real. Like it is one of those examples of there isn't a big pool, but what's in that pool is remarkably deep.
well, when you're suddenly got a 4-range giant reach with close combat expert from the Thing, and you smote somebody, you got a 12 attack doing 4 damage or an 11 attack doing 5 damage, and it's a quick way to kill Valeria. Or Valeria, whatever you want to call her. I don't even know which one's right anymore.
According to Google pronunciation, it was Valeria.
Valeria, okay.
According
I'm going to call her Valeria.
I can't imagine anyone besides those who went to the mall in 1992 saying anything other than Valeria.
That's it. I had to do it because of Galleria Mall. Shout out to Galleria Mall. Dufferin in Dovercourt in Toronto. What up?
I'm going to say it's an age thing because the 2 people I know who have pronounced it Valeria as opposed to Valeria have been you and my friend Aiden.
Totally. It's totally an age thing. It's Lydia Mailer, just so everybody knows.
Lydia Malor.
Lydia. Lydia. That's why she takes your stuff.
That said, in addition to that, I am getting a little bit of a better idea of how Latveria fits into the meta as a keyword. It's looking a little better than initially thought. I mean, there's a lot of repetition in with the Doombots, obviously. Don't sleep on the uncommon Valeria, though. Little
or
Valeria.
the uncommon Valeria.
Yeah, for that matter. That +2 perplex goes a long way. And the ability to pick an attack power. It's a potent little package for 40 points on that character. And I got to take back some of the mean things I said about Doom 2099. I've used him, and he seems to be working a lot better than anticipated.
Honestly, I took a closer look afterwards and rethought some of my bad things as well. Like, we kind of made fun of him in that way that we do, because we like making jokes.
We do like to smile and laugh, and like when something is bad, we do like to kind of pile on it. And his KO ability is pretty rough. But for one thing, it's only a turn, so depending on how your opponent is looking, I mean, and it's 125 points of your 300-point team, so you're already kind of in a bad place anyway.
It's just his style doesn't look, it just looks old school. It just looks like,
The Doombots really help,
Yeah.
and like some special objects can really go a long way with them. Like there's an additive effect for some special objects with them.
He looks like Agent Venom.
Attacking twice in a turn goes a long way too.
Yeah, for sure.
I know. I can't come around. Don't make me.
It's you know what? It's that whole thing. It's you haven't tried the pasta yet. You got to try the pasta.
I just got the pasta in the mail the other day. Okay, I got
Try
it fresh. Ryan sent them to me. Mwah, thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. Doom 2099. Actually, you got both title characters from him. Mwah, thank you.
Nice. I'm actually the last figure I'm waiting on to come in the mail is the super rare Prime Ghost Rider.
Me too.
It's like he's in the mail. Coming from Buffalo, it was funny. I had a figure from Buffalo and a figure from Ohio, and Ohio won. But that was Chase Valeria, so I was okay with that.
I also have her coming in the mail. I went a little nuts. I've been in this house too much. And, I went crazy. Everybody who posted saw me jumping all over things. Oh, you got one of those?
No, I was like,
PM sent.
I was actually getting very tired of seeing I just sold it when it came to Valeria.
Right?
I was like, come on! Or actually, it was when I was trying to trade my Franklin for it. It was like, yeah! I missed it again, like the Pokeroo.
Totally. Pokeroo. That's very Canadian.
Canadian
people are gonna
content.
know on that one.
I mean,
Pokeroo.
we are required by law to have a certain percentage of it, right? So.
For the love of God, Pokeroo.
There's an Eric Lang games behind me somewhere, I think, so that's our Canadian content. I don't know.
Sweet.
That said, Tom, you introduced it in our WhatsApp chat. You came up with a good idea of what to talk about today, because the three of us are very likely jumping in on that Rock Worlds Online team event. Team Highlander, as it were. So, Tom.
Extreme Highlander.
Let's... how about you introduce what you wanted to talk about in regards to this?
Sure. Well, this was funny. What I think I'm not going to go verbatim what I put in the chat, but what I basically said was, we could talk a little bit about approaches to team building for the ROC Extreme Highlander team event. But considering that we haven't really talked about it at all, and we've never done it before, and we have no ideas, we certainly cannot speak from a place of expertise. So what this is basically is a live stream of us fumbling around trying to figure out how you might approach it as three old men who barely play Heroclix Online, trying to understand how you play a Heroclix Online team tournament with this format.
I'm actually currently trying to get the event to come up. Come on, man!
So I think ultimately what Tom's trying to say is, when we enter this event, should you lose to us, that's sad. Because we're building our team right now.
We're the guys that we
right
went.
now.
What was it? 1-1 in the first team event we came into and got into the top 8, and we were so happy about being in the top 8. We got the worst dirty looks, but we actually cheered and jumped on each other. Like, yeah, top 8, we did it, guys!
It would have been less embarrassing had it was one of those things where did they go in order? Did they start at 8 and go to 1, or 1 and go to 8?
1 and go to 8. They did 1 and go to 8.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because everyone else knew and took for granted what their place was. So we were the last one listed and the only ones who cheered.
Yeah,
everyone was like, I figured, okay, we made it. Yeah, we made it. Yeah, we made it. We're like, we made it.
Effort, yeah, wow,
we did it! Yeah, go Canada!
Oh wait, we play more games. Not working with 8. Okay.
So I think what might be helpful is just for anyone who doesn't know explaining what the format is. So the idea with the particular flavor of Highlander they're doing for the team setup is that your collective 3 forces for your team cannot share any game elements. And so the idea is still much like any other teams tournament. I guess actually we shouldn't take this for granted either. If you're not familiar with how Teams Heroclix works, you're not all on the same map or anything like that. What happens is that you get 3 people together. They are your team, and they in each round of the tournament, then each player will have a one-on-one matchup with another member of an opposing team. And the idea is ultimately the wins matter first and points matter secondarily. Usually, this I've seen kind of go both ways, but usually it's wins first.
Even in normal Heroclix, wins first, followed by points.
But
in this case, it's wins, wins in the 2-1 category, being like, hey, you've won against your opponent, followed by how many wins your team got. So if we're a team and all 3 of our guys won, that's like a 3-win point, and we'll be better placed than another team that got a win but got 2-1. And then if it's 2-3-0 teams that played, and then we go next to the points after that for placement.
So the idea then is that you're not actually playing as a team on the same map or anything, but ultimately you're all pulling for each other, and the idea is that you're trying to win at least 2 of your games. Ideally, you win as many of your games as possible, and you score as many points as possible. That's normal. But defining winning a round would be winning at least 2 of 3 games. And so in this case, the way that the sort of what we're calling the Extreme Highlander idea works is that of those 3 teams, no game element may be shared. And that includes all game elements. So it's a combination of, obviously figures are the obvious one, but whether it be sideline or main force, any given figure may only appear once. Now, can you have multiples of the same figure on the same team?
No.
No.
I didn't think. Okay.
No, it's extreme. Aren't the maps also limited? Like we
Yes.
can't share
Yeah,
maps.
it's another game element. So
Yeah.
maps, special objects, obviously, map bonuses that kind of comes along with maps. Special terrain would be another thing that falls into this category. What else is there besides objects, special terrains, and map bonuses and figures? These days, I don't know. Anyway, that's enough to start with. And that also means things that normally you throw onto every sideline, your trouble alerts, your troublemakers, etc. You got to figure out where those are.
Yeah, you have to ration those across all 3 teams.
So the idea then is to say, how might one approach this type of building? And it is an open question. We've never done it before. So, cards on the table. We've done it in Team Sealed, where you literally cannot share game elements because you only have the pile that's in front of you and you're physically dealing them out to people. And so it has some similar DNA with the Team Sealed idea, but basically your sealed pulls are one of everything that exists in the game. And because of that, then it sort of encourages a slightly different approach. So what I proposed to do was to start this conversation off by throwing out a few different ideas about how one might consider building for this. And what I'm interested from hearing from both of you guys and anyone who wants to comment, etc., in the chat, etc., is sort of other ideas that might come to mind about how you might approach it and how one might go about doing it. Because ultimately, this is a conversation that we literally need to have, and why not do it now? So I guess what I've kind of been thinking about it and come up with 4. I think I said 3 in the chat, but upon more thought, I've basically thought of 4 different approaches you might take to building teams in this setting. Now, disclaimer, I'm not dividing differently between the idea of getting one person to do all the building, or getting 2 people to do all the building, or getting all 3 people to do all the building. Heck, it could be more than that. If you're a part of a larger team where there's lots of people, you can have lots of different brains in the room. Because I think you're going to kind of go through the same process regardless of whether it's one person doing it or multiple. It's just a question of how many different voices there are throwing out ideas as part of that process. But the underlying mechanics of how you approach building are the same, whether you're doing it in your own brain or you're doing it in conversation. So keep that in the back of your mind, that I'm not differentiating one person versus multiples, but that is something that you'll want to figure out with your own team. Do you have somebody who is like the designated builder? Do you have somebody who you trust a lot more than you do to try to build the best stuff? Or even maybe do 2 of the 3 people kind of, are they more simpatico and another person's more just like a player? Keep that stuff in the back of your head. The 4 different approaches that I was suggesting one could take are, the first is the obvious one to me, at least it seems obvious on first blush, which is what I'm calling the jigsaw puzzle, which is literally you create a bunch of teams. It could be that everyone creates 1 team, it could be that everyone creates 2 teams, it could be everyone creates 3, it could be different people create numbers. But you basically take a whole bunch of teams, you throw them together into a chat, and you say how many of these could theoretically have as much differentiation in terms of game elements as possible, and then is there a way to tweak them so that they line up so that you've got distinct ones. So this is literally the most basic approach, is you build a bunch of teams and you figure out which ones are a complete no-go because they're 80% the same elements, which ones are the same but maybe they have the same map bonus and could you theoretically live without it. Is one of them have a sideline figure that the other one really needs on the force, and if you choose one of the others, it can invalidate one of the teams. So you make tweaks from a pool of teams. That's probably the obvious one. That's my jigsaw puzzle. Another approach you might take is what I would call the categorization attempt, which is where you start out by figuring out a few different categorizing buckets you want to build from, and then go from there. The most obvious one would be keywords. So if you have somebody who says, I really want to build a Scrolls team, and you have somebody else who says, I really want to build a Ruler team, and somebody else says, I really want to build a Warrior team, or somebody wants to build a Fantastic Four team, or whatever, a JLA team, automatically there may be still some overlap in game elements there, particularly objects and maps, and of course because many characters have multiple keywords, there may be some overlap, but by starting with pre-categorizing and then trying to build the best version of each, you're basically doing a more well thought out version of the jigsaw approach, because you wind up with a short list of teams that already should be mostly distinct and ideally require not a ton of tweaking. And then you kind of approach that and say, will even the smallest tweak completely ruin the team, or will it still work? So you can do jigsaw puzzle. You can do it by category. There are other categories, by the way. You want to build a swarm team that's distinct from a one-man army, that's distinct from an alpha strike team, that's distinct from a don't die team. There isn't going to be that much common DNA between a don't die team and a one-man army, obviously, or especially between a don't die team and an alpha strike team. Rarely is there a lot of overlap there. So again, the categorization might help. The third approach that you could take is basically shortlist what the best figures are. I call this the draft approach. Basically, shortlist the best game elements. Doesn't even have to be figures. And then discuss amongst your team who wants to take and build around individual ones. So basically, if you say, you know what, I really want to build a Jason Wingard team, maybe a ruler theme, maybe a non-theme, maybe a Hellfire Club theme. But I want to do Jason Wingard stuff. And we say, okay, so you take Wingard, and because you're taking Wingard, we also assume that you're going to take a couple of pieces that maybe are giving specific things for the sideline. Maybe you're assuming that that's also going to be your Tri-Sentinel team, and you're going to roll Hellfire Club. But you basically say, I want this thing that's great. And then somebody else says, I want this thing that's great, and I want this thing that's great. And you each then build a team around it, and then come back and say how many elements overlap, and try to see where you can tweak. But the idea is still, you basically start with the best stuff and say, I want to take these things and play with them. And somebody else says, I want to take these things and play with them. Because at any given point, you may be able to identify 10, 20 of the best pieces, the best game elements, and use those as a starting point. And the last thing I think you can do, and this one's probably easier done individually, but you absolutely can do it together. And we do this, I know some people do this with Team Sealed, is what I would call a hierarchical approach, which is literally you build the best team you can build. And then you say, okay, that's now a ban list. What is the next best team I can build? And so you just go in order.
Yeah.
Just one after another.
It's like
Start
make an S tier, A tier, B tier team.
Exactly. There's so much out there that even without multiple characters on the map at any given point, of the same character, I should say, on the map, and even with the uniqueness amongst the three teams, there is just so much that you get one great team, there's a very good chance that your next team down is also going to have a pretty good chance of being great. So, that approach is absolutely a viable one too. So that's kind of my preamble, is to say, I think that you should discuss with your team what you like, but different people will have different personality types. And so some like just build teams and then say, here are my ideas, here's the 10 teams I built. And then you all kind of look at them and say, well, this one looks distinct, this one looks distinct, this one looks distinct. Or you say, you know what, you seem to really be on a Skrulls kick right now, Mike, you build a Skrulls team. Tom, you love Earth X, go build Earth X team.
The excitement Mike had in his face when you said that. He was like, right now? Really? Can I?
Right. So that's, the one version is just pure jigsaw puzzle. The other one is figure out the category that you're each going to build and go build it. Another approach, as I said, would be figure out who wants to take which pieces and build around them. And last one is literally you just build a great team and then try to build another great team and then try to build another great team and make it completely agnostic of what you might want to do. Like, that's what comes to my mind when I was thinking about team building options. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think, at least, as far as, do you think I'm missing anything, or, what do you think?
Mike? Oh, you ain't missing nothing.
I'm trying to think of a time where Tom didn't miss, like, an overarching topic, and I think, ultimately, you also started to touch on in the end where one of these categories might actually end up being a hybrid of multiples, where one guy says, hey, here's 5 teams I've come up with. What do you guys think of these 5 teams? And then another guy might just jump in and say, look, these are good, but here's something that doesn't share anything with these and I think is really good. And I think that there's an organicness to it. But ultimately, and you also touched on this, is it will come down to team personalities. How do you and your teammates get along? And how will you say, come to the conclusions that you need. I know a lot of teams are probably looking in the area of 2 of those strategies specifically. The one you mentioned where it's like start with a really good team, one player plays that, so you've got like that win or at least the 50-50 win in that slot, and then build down from there. But I also think a lot of them are going to be build your team and then let's work from there and see if we can tweak or agree.
Right.
The more the Yeah, I think those are going to be the top 2 ways that are probably, if I was to say the most effective, I'd be lying. But I do think they will be the most popular ways that teams build.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting point that you raised. I mean, what do you think would be a more effective method than the those two poles, because the one pole is the build the best team, then build the next team, and the other pole is just build teams and see which ones fit together. Like, where is the in between point that you think works better?
And that, I think that comes down to what does the metagame look like? Because for one thing, we have to define what is the best team, and it's hard to say because a lot of people are also pointing out that the Black Widow team is good, but it's not necessarily winning everything. But that's, again, I want to go back to, when did we start this show and start talking about copycat? It's a little boy in underwear. It's a team you have to consider, and it's up there and really good. But is there a defined best? And then when you define the best, are you taking anything from another team? And when I say that team, not really, unless you start fighting over Immortal Hulks. Because because you won't be able to play double up with your Captain Marvels, you will have to do that. But I have to kind of step away for a second. So, Mike, I'll let you kind of carry on.
Yeah, what do you think, Mike?
Oh my God. It's hard because first you have to sit down and really decide what it is that you as a team, as the three of you, want to accomplish. I think if you're really, really trying to win, like, okay, we want to, then you sort of lean towards the what's the best team aspect. I think you have to, knowing that it's three people, knowing that you're almost trying to always guarantee that one of those is a win, to make it seem like you got a 50-50 chance. You understand what I mean with the loose math there? That basically, if you're sort of locked into that one win, you got a 50-50 chance coming out of those other two, blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot to be said about putting a lot of emphasis into creating your best possible team that three brains can make. And like you said, there's enough figures, enough material in the pool that it doesn't mean the other two teams are going to be weak. No, in fact, you still have plenty to make a second team that's equally on par. I think there's so much stuff in the meta right now, too, that there isn't one runaway stratagem.
Right.
There is not one runaway team. Black Widow, really good, but it's not one runaway stratagem that beats all and stops all. So even if you make what you think is the ultimate team, there's still something out there that probably could beat that. So in theory, it's not a bad idea to sort of build your best team, and then one of your other teams is a team that kind of actually beats that team.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's another interesting point, and one I was going to bring up, so thank you for segueing naturally, is to what extent do you think it's a benefit to try to either build a common, shall we say, a common deployment strategy or a differential deployment strategy within your teams? Or does it matter at all? Is it beneficial to, if your absolute best team is fundamentally a don't die team, then do you want to build another team that basically goes in an opposite direction, or does it even matter?
It does become hard to say. Like there's value in if you're going from top tier teams and building the three best teams, and like you said, you got the don't die. Do you build something that specifically beats that? I mean, if you can kill don't die, there's a lot of things you can also kill. I think that goes a long way. It's like if oh darn, I gotta get a second attack past your stop click. If you don't have a stop click, I get a second attack past whatever is left from what I did. So I think when it comes to that, if there is a strategy that can stretch that far, in as far as like what I said, where it's like, oh, don't die is the thing we got to beat. Okay, well, it beats don't die. Am I giving up to a lot of teams if I don't beat that, or if I go in that direction? Right. It's when you have things like, hey, this character can't use stop clicks. Okay, is this character who does this going to be useless? There's a couple that do it. There's the Chase Odin, and there's the I want to say Karnak. No, yeah, Karnak. Karnak is going to be a character who can say like you can outwit things that can be you can't use protected outwit or something like that. Is that the right one?
Protected outwit. Yeah, protected outwit is what Karnak gets rid of.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's both versions of protected outwit that he stops, so you could outwit the stop.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah,
Is that going to be useless? No, because it's just a really strong outwit, right? So, and as far as that, I think if it beats the top tier, it should be good enough. And I think a little bit of, we'll call it incestuous practice, is very strong for that particular type of team. But never put the blinders on to the rest of the world too, right? Do kind of account for things that do exist. But you're right, is make sure you have your deployments and your strategies to deal with the teams you're making if you're going for those top tier teams, because you're going to have to, because of the way this is all lined up, this was another thing I kind of wanted to sneak into the conversation. Let's say two teams took the same strategy, built the best team, built the next best team, built the next best team, with whatever was left from the previous. Now both those threesomes play against each other. What then starts to become the wacky part is the ABC lineup.
Absolutely.
Do you want to talk?
We've had fun with that.
Oh yeah, we've had fun with that for years.
Oh yeah, man. We're playing those mind games. It's totally a mind game. What do you know? It's a mind game.
Oh no,
I always thought it was kind of random.
No, but
Me and Mike,
it's random and it's not. That's
Yeah.
the point. Some people just do it random. Like, whoever built their first team first gets to be A. Us, it's usually, let's make Jason do the paperwork.
Every time we've ever done it, it's been in person, which means somebody actually has to write things on paper.
Right?
We're
So
not it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we do it. So
I'm
for
always
us,
putting
in a way,
things down.
random.
It's like, who's doing the paperwork, and my hands are still full, so I can't get my hand on the finger. Like, no!
But we've talked about it. We've talked about it to the extent of saying, well, do you think most people put their best team as their A? Or do most people think, no, because most people put it as their A, so now we gotta, that's the fun part. It's that whole, it's the shell game. Right?
What gets me is, now that we're having this conversation on a more public forum, we have now put that thought in other teams' minds. And the other guys are like, hold on a second, okay, what's going to be our A team? Maybe we should put our best team in the C team, because that's where people are going to put their grab teams.
I don't know. I contend that it already is on people's minds and that it's silly. Yes, everyone is being super silly.
It is 100% silly until you have the conversation.
Dude, it's the Princess Bride Poison Cup.
Exactly.
It's the Vecima problem.
It's great. It's I love that happens. That actually is part of what I like about the team event more than anything else. Is when everybody gets to that point, it's like, oh, wait a minute. They put their crappy player in C? I mean, I'd want to put him in C, but maybe that's the trick. They're going to put a really good team in C. Don't put our crappy team in C. Oh, wait, if they know that I know that they know that I know that they... Yeah.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. If based on the last team event the three of us participated in, everybody puts their good stuff in the A. And we did not.
No, we did not. We did not.
Boy, did we not.
This also allows an interesting pivot to another related topic on this, which is, this is a somewhat unique format, even separate from the fact that it's the teams format, because of the fact that every game element, for one thing, is completely distinct. And that also means that within any given team, you can't have multiples. Mm-hmm. So what I would be asking the group is, what is it that you think when you approach a tournament like this? Like, what are the things that you're keeping in the back of your mind that distinguish it from your average tournament? And I'll lead with one so that you have a second to think. One of the things that comes with my own thought on this is, it is much harder for the most part, not exclusively, but for the most part, to build very many variations of the super high numerical theme teams builds without the ability to repeat any characters. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's much more limited.
It's complicated, yeah.
Because you can't have 10 Wendigos. You can only have one Wendigo.
Yeah.
You can't have 10 Brainiacs. Is Brainiac unique? I can't remember.
Brainiac's not unique. You can have multiples.
Okay, so you could have 10. So you can't have Dr. Fate and 20 Dr. Fate clones, right? Like, you can't, in fact, really actually...
You can't even have one Dr. Fate clone.
Right.
There's other characters become useless. The Joker.
Yeah, you can't play Joker.
Yeah.
You effectively can't play the Joker.
Yeah. And that also means you're not going to be playing against it. So if you're if you're used to fearing a squad of Tri-Sentinels, you automatically don't.
Yeah.
You may face one, but you're not going to face many. And so, like, there are a couple things with that. One is that, obviously some of the pieces you might be more afraid of, if they only really are fearsome in numbers, it's not a huge concern. But I guess the point I was driving towards was, maybe you don't have as much pressure as you often do to think the only way that you're really going to win map is if you have a +10, because there are still a few builds that will be able to get those extreme high numbers and still differentiate all their characters. It absolutely is possible within the modern now, but because it is so much more limiting, they may by default not have as much going for them besides the big number, and thus they won't be as tempting for some people to play. So you may have a much better chance of winning with a theme team at a +4, 5, +6 than you normally would. Like, it's funny to say, those of us who've been playing the game a long time, that a +6 is not that great a chance of winning map these days, but it's true. And it's maybe a little less true than it was a few months ago, but it still is true. So that's the first thing I would say about this format specifically that makes me think differently than normal, is theme teams, we build theme anyway because it's kind of our default, but the value of building a theme, if you're only a +4 or a +5, is often debatable, especially if it's a generic theme team. But in this setting, I think it actually is more likely to be meaningful, because I think theme will go a little farther because there won't be as many giant stack theme teams, in my opinion. So that's the first thing I would say it's unique about this format. What else can you think of that would be unique about this format?
Well, what's tough is there's certain sort of stratagems that people sort of get in the habit of, like an overlapping thing. So as an example, like you mentioned, the don't die tag and things like that.
Okay, hold on. Before we carry on, I want to just correct myself on the Joker, because there's an FAQ on the Rock Online Team Nationals here. For Team Highlander, for figures like Dr. Fate, the Joker, the Cable, are you allowed to play their traits for play the extra figures? The Joker's and the Cable's optional trait will be legal for the tournament. The trait allows you to pay for optional trait, blah, blah, blah. This ruling was made in the 2019 Rock Cup for the 15 Cable, and we want to stay consistent. However, the Dr. Fates via this won't be legal for Team Highlander. So, I'm an idiot.
Interesting.
No,
that's
you're not an idiot. It also means that, like, that particular example doesn't apply, but there are many other examples that still do, because after all, you still can't do 10 winners.
Yeah.
But like certain basics, like certain objects started to get really common, right? Like, we've seen tons of Remaker Ring. We've seen Spin Ring is huge now, right? It's a whole other aspect of replacement. Right. And so there's this thing about, you can't just build your team like, okay, I want to play the stratagem don't die tech, and you're going to play the stratagem of, like, all of a sudden I'm up in your face or whatever. If there's the overlapping of the objects, that's what I'm finding really interesting. The figures, sure, there's a little bit of fiddling, but once you sort of go, I'm going to play this theme, or I'm going to play this style, and you're going to play this style, the figures themselves are probably going to be separated. If I'm making sense, I'm just using a lot of the same words to try and differentiate. But you know what I'm saying? Like, if I decide to play a Skrull theme team, and you decide to play some kind of Undying team, and Jason decides to play like maybe a robot-based team, like, there's probably going to be less figure crossover than object crossover. Yeah. That's where I think it really gets tough, because as we're building, I mean, even things like location bonuses. You know, people get in the habit of, Iron Avengers, that's such a great location bonus. Well, only one of us is going to have that as an option when we get down to having 5 points left. And we're so used to also building in that kind of scenario where we're like, leave 15 points, leave 10 points so we can put objects. We're going to build a team to 290, and then we're all going to look at each other and be like, okay, who gets what for those last 10 points, right? Like, it's really, that's what I'm finding the most interesting about this format. Everything else about it, I kind of somewhat built that way in general. I've been more of a Highlander kind of person than most, but the objects, yeah, right? Like, I mean, how many spin rings do we see all the time now at tournaments? Right. I mean, that's the one that pops in my head more than any other.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I gotta say, when I go back to, hey, what do you do in this Highlander format? My first goal is always, can I break your Highlander rules? It's always my first goal. And I go back to the Pauper Provincials, where I played a Sentinel team because I wanted to make Sentinels. and I was like, I'm allowed to make things, you say?
Yeah, I made sure to not let you do that.
And I guess there's another thing that we should probably mention. And again, this is just for those. I'm doing this for two reasons. One is for anyone who may be confused and is watching the show, and anyone on this show can correct me if I happen to be wrong. But I'm reasonably certain that you like this Extreme Highlander thing can apply to all things, except if they actually are just from outside the game.
Yeah, as long as it affects anything that's just from outside of the game. Now, there in this FAQ, there's another ruling specifically on the Mandarin. If one of us decides to play the Mandarins, we are not locking our opponents, our buddies, away from the other rings.
Right. And it also means that, for example, we've talked about the Black Widow that can produce Widows initiates and recruits.
Yep.
Those don't come from the sideline, so
right.
you can just crank them out.
Yeah.
By all means.
Scary.
Yeah.
Or my Doctor Doom leaderships can make Doombots.
Yeah, and like Sentinels, another good example. Like you've got some of those guys who, when they would succeed at leadership, they produce a Friend of Humanity, and if you got enough Friends of Humanity, they produce Sentinels. All that's from outside the game. So
or both Bastions just flat out make them. Just here's a Colossus Sentinel. Deal with that.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of them. So if you're just in the back of your mind, if you like me would have a thought and then have the immediate urge to dismiss it because you think, oh no, that's against the rules. Give it that extra second just to make sure that you've thought through whether it's a sideline effect or an outside the game effect.
All right. So I kind of want to present this idea because we're talking about it, and we're not proclaiming to be experts, but we are coming from that philosophy level of it because we have experienced it in the team format. Where do we stand on that as a team? Because the three of us are obviously we are an ongoing team that we've been playing these events a long time. How do you think we're gonna roll?
Well, I mean, let's look at it this way. Why don't we do this as a fun game on camera? All right. So you have a hand. I've described 4 different methodologies for building teams. One would represent the jigsaw puzzle. We all just build teams and then share them, and we'll see what comes of it. So just build teams and throw them all together. Number 2 would be we each pick a keyword and build around that thing. Number 3 would be we each pick a figure or a game element and build around that thing. And number 4 is we try to agree on what's the best team and then build the next team and the next team. All right?
I already know our answer.
Well, I want to do it together. I want to see what each.
Okay, but I'm not. I just want to say before we give the answer, I technically have 2 answers, and I just have to ask first. So
you have 2 hands too.
Well, what I'm saying is there's the answer of, do we really think, or are we trying to win this thing, or are we doing what we normally do?
I think that you should throw down what your heart tells you and then explain why, because that's what I want to do. Remember, number 1 is jigsaw puzzle. We all have teams. Number 2, we choose a keyword and build around it. Number 3, we choose a figure or a game element and build around it. Number 4, we build the best team together, then we build the next team, then we build the next team. I'm just interested to see, throw up your hand on what you would like to do.
I'm allowed to use both hands, you said? I know what's going to happen, and I know what we think we want.
I have a guess, but I want to see what happens here.
Well, I have what I think we're going to do, and I have what I think we should do.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
all right.
Okay. Let's start.
Do them one after the other. First of all, what do we want to do? All right.
What do we want to do? Not what I think we actually will do.
Okay. So we'll do count of 3. What do we want to do?
Okay.
Ready?
All right. 1, 2, 3, 2.
1.
Oh my God! 1, 2, and 4.
That's hilarious.
I'm just saying. I think we build the best team, whatever.
Yep.
But my answer of what I think we're gonna do based on how we normally are,
and that's gonna be the next one. All right. So I said 2. Tom said 1, and Mike said 4. And what's going to happen on a count of 3? 1, 2, 3.
2.
So me and Mike both said 1, and Tom said 2.
1 and 2 are pretty similar, so
yeah.
We know how we do things.
Yeah.
We're just all going to build a team. We're going to go, hey, here's the team. Oh, are there repeating elements? No? Awesome. We're done. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to be like, I think we're just going to build our teams and just draft the sideline.
All right. So now let's round out the trifecta. what do you think we should do? If we had the ability to
I thought that was the first answer.
No. The first one's what we want to do. The second one's what we think we're going to do.
That's what I mean. What we should
And then
do is what we want to do.
Well,
No. What we should do is what all logic and proper preparation and good team building should be.
Yeah. If we had the appropriate patience and the appropriate, stick-to-itiveness, what do you think is what we should be doing? All right? Let's do that one, right?
Right. 1, 2, 3, go.
I'm going to go with 1 anyway.
Oh, Tom's going to go with 1 anyway.
It's still what I think we should do because it's what we want to do.
That's fair.
What I think we should do, and this is because this is the reason I didn't want to answer your previous question, Mike, about the are we building to win or not? Because I think that if we haven't played Heroclix in so long and we just want to have some fun playing competitive Heroclix, that we should do the thing we want to do, and what we want to do is build some teams.
I agree. Well, that's why I got confused with the first question. I thought you were saying what we should do, like what we want to do that thing.
I figured we were just predicting the future and what was going to happen.
What I want to do, of course, is build theme. I already built a team while we were sitting here.
Yeah.
And there's no repeating elements, and you have to let me use the spin ring, so we're good.
Yeah, I've got a couple too. As long as I'm good with the remaker, then
I have enough shade gauge. I don't need a remaker.
If he's using spin, that means I've either got to use influence or stop thinking about Valeria.
Anyway, the reason I think it's the reality of it is we like building teams. I don't think that it will be very easy for us to agree on what the best team is, because that's the other thing. And maybe there are better Heroclix players out there than us. I'm willing to accept that possibility.
Oh, there are definitely.
It's been demonstrated to be factually true time and time again.
Did you say demonstrated?
I could have.
That's why I stopped showing him my teams. I just don't want to feel bad by the end of the day.
But here's the thing I'm gonna say, and this is what makes us the relatable Meta Heroclix podcast, because we have things that we like and we have things that we don't. If the absolute best team out there is a type of build with a type of pieces, like let's say that it was a Unimind build, which I've never liked, I would not want to play it, even if it was the best team. And that's why I don't think the fourth category works well for us, because I don't think that we, at our best day, are the sort of people who generally will play the best thing just because it's the best thing, if there's still a very good thing that feels right. And I think we're also on different spectrums. I think Mike is actually probably a little more inclined to play the best thing if there is a defined best one, but maybe not.
Maybe. Well,
yeah.
I agree with almost everything you say there. I think we could, as a group, if we sat down and we looked at what was going on in the meta, I think 100% the three of us could totally figure out what's one of the best teams. What could take on most of the really good stuff. Absolutely we could. That's the only thing I disagree with in what you said, though. Right. Everything else, I totally agree. We've never been that way. We like to play what we like, and
we'll do that, and it'll be like, I hate this already.
That's it. We didn't just get it. None of us started playing this game with the intention of being the best at this game. No. I think we all got into it and got a little competitive. We had a competitive spirit, and now we want to do well to an extent, but it was never our first intention. So we always kind of love the subject matter, and we love the building and the crafting and whatever. So, of course, being three guys with various tastes, we like to play what we like, and we like to try out what we like, and we don't want to follow what everybody else necessarily does. Right. I'm totally going to look at what other people play to get maybe ideas on some workings of things, and that's a strategy I hadn't thought of. But definitely, I don't want to play what everybody else plays. I want to be able to sit down and say, yeah, that might be like that, but I built it for this, and this is what I love of it, and it's going to work or it's not going to work, you know?
Right. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that if you know that that's the way you like to be. And I think that's true of everybody listening on and stuff. So, I mean, it's not the best suggestion from a purely competitive Heroclix perspective, but honestly, if a team, here's what I would suggest. If you play a team that is a 90 out of 100, but the best you can do with it is a 70, your total score is still 160. If you can play a team that's a 70 out of 100, but you can play it at 100, that's a higher overall score. And that may be a weird way of putting it, but if the team that feels right to you, the team that you can play best, even if it's the next best team for the larger span of the world of Heroclix, is still probably going to be better for you. It's going to be better for your soul, and it's probably going to be better for the outcome of the game too, in my opinion.
Plus, anything can happen. We've seen it. We've seen people. We've seen results from events. We've seen each other do it. Where we've made teams. We've seen other people build a team, and they played an event. And it's like, oh, okay, you're playing blah blah blah. That's interesting, and they win. And because it's a dice game, and it's a weird matchup game, and we got to pick different maps each time. Like there's a whole bunch of variables that are happening in this game. It's like an any given Sunday thing, right? For those people who love football, like. Teams, if you can play this game and you have an interesting mind and you can be creative, there's always the chance for you when you sit down at that table that you can win. So wouldn't you rather kind of enjoy the ride, as it were, than be like, I had to sort of rip somebody else's idea? Like, yeah, it wins because somebody won with it. There's no surprise there. Somebody's already won. Oh, they've actually won multiple tournaments. There's no surprise there. I've been way more excited about the teams I made that I was like, I think this might be crazy. I don't think this is going to work. And then it worked. And it was like, oh my God, that worked. I can't believe that worked. That's so cool. It might not even be a big tournament.
To this day, I'll never forget the reaction. And this comes down to I think the three of us, we don't want to win the way that somebody else told us is the best. We want to win on our terms. All three of us have this problem. We'll call it pride.
No, it's a problem. It is pride. I think that, and it cometh before the fall, which is usually what happens when we go to tournaments.
And when it comes down to it, I'll still say my favorite was watching the reactions of myself and Mike and our teams from that year at Nationals, where we made the top 8 and I made the top 3, and it was just like, what are these guys doing? What are these maniacs playing? It was just, and everybody was being polite when they were talking about the teams, but you could hear it in their voice. They're just like, what? So, I mean,
two figures? Yeah. My team was 2 figures. Yeah. We were like, what? You're playing 2 dudes?
Yeah. So, and I feel like there's more when people are going, what are you doing there? Then, okay, well, he won with this, and that's going to be my pride thing. And if that means I'm not going to win Worlds, I'm still having fun on my rides, so this is my fun time hobby game.
And just to be even-handed about it, we're also not throwing shade at anybody who does approach it differently.
No.
Because I think what we're really getting at here, and it's the sort of this is how I would wrap up the whole topic of how to approach teams, is figure out what you want to get out of the experience and then lean into that. We've been addressing the fact that what we like is building teams and throwing them around. So whether it's the best idea on paper or not is ultimately not the be-all, end-all result. The point is to do what feels right to you as somebody who plays this game, for the fact that it is a game and a leisure activity, and none of us are doing it professionally, and none of us are doing it because we have that much of that much invested in our own personal value as a reflection of our ability to play Heroclix. Rather, what I value about this game is the enjoyment of doing it. So if you can do that, I think you'll be always happy.
And also, too, life's a lot about living in the present, right? I mean, that's part of the point of playing the game, is that you're in that moment and you're rolling the dice and you're moving the figures and you're having reactions to the person, and it's being present in the moment. And I know from all of our conversations that most of our talk of Heroclix and excitement about Heroclix have never actually been so much about a win as much as a moment in a game. There's been some huge losses I've had in games, but there was a moment in the game where something happened, and it was so cool that thing happened in the moment of that game that I'll remember that more than I'll remember, I won this tournament. Do you remember any of the games of that tournament? Honestly, I don't. Because things worked. My team worked, and dice rolled well, and nothing out of the ordinary happened. But I still remember at Nationals, I feel like it was maybe the first year, and I played that weird Thunderbolts team with Speed Demon and Bullseye and the Power Plant and that Cowboy Pog, and I was playing Patrick, and I'm not going to say your last name, Patrick, because I always screw it up. Many-time world champion. Thank you very much. I always screw up your last name, and I feel like I've insulted you by doing it. Patrick's an amazing player, and I was so nervous to play this game with him, and he was owning me almost the whole time, playing Alyosha, and it was great. And there was one moment where I got that disintegrator ring on Speed Demon, did his little swirling thing around somebody, and destroyed the relic that they had. And Patrick just looked at me, he was like, that was cool. I totally didn't see that coming. I didn't even think of that. And he owned me the whole game. Like I didn't have a chance in that game. Even doing that didn't do anything to fix it for me. It was like I had to take that little piece and put it into place. Like, ah. But that's it. It was like a moment, and we had a moment. We talked about it, and it was cool. And I know there was a long ramble, but honestly, I think a lot of this game is more about the moments than it is just about winning.
Absolutely. 100%. I miss everybody. I miss playing with people, man. I'm playing locally, but I miss going the long trip. I miss it. I can't wait for it to come back. So I'm gonna settle for this. I think this is gonna be my last Roll20 thing, though. I'm getting a little dry on it, to be honest. I don't want to look at it anymore. I'm gonna finish the Critical Clicks Classic in this team tournament. I'm done with it for a while. I need a break because this game is such a social thing for me. That said. I think we kind of covered the topic at length. I think the only thing I missed is make sure you like the people you're teaming up with, and if not, just make sure you're an agreeable person.
Oh, crap. Oh,
Right.
sorry.
If neither of those is true, then
Yeah.
watch it.
Ooh,
Exactly.
How did I end up on this team?
At the same time, if you get along too well, you might
Yeah,
never get
that-
anything done. And when's the cutoff for this? We gotta sign up for this soon, don't we? It's like $90 US to sign up. We'll figure it out. Anyway.
We're just throwing money in a hole.
Yeah. That said, we're going to move on to questions. There's not much going on, though, but if you are watching us live, if you put in capital letters question for your question, I will answer it. And there are some, it's not too busy in the chat today, so there's a couple I can identify. But if you want to be a big supporter for us, check us out at patreon.com/MarriedWithClicks. Any valuation is much appreciated. And token patrons, they're on the way. I don't know when they're going to come in. Mail sucks right now. The mail really sucks right now. So, but all valuations get early access to our recorded content. And, access to our patron Discord as well. So if you want to check this out, patreon.com/MarriedWithClicks. That said, let's check that patron Discord to see if anything is going on in that Troll the Metal Lab chat. I don't think much is going on today, though. We had a bit of an off week last week with the holiday, so it kind of threw off the entire week for us. It doesn't look like there's anything going on in there. So in the live chat, my dad, your dad, rather, the guy, his username is your dad.
Oh, okay.
That's a whole lot of awkward for me.
Right?
Hashtag triggered.
Interested
right.
to see where you're at for team builds. I'm torn between the Fantastic Four and a God team build. Right now, I'm kind of lingering on Latveria. That's where I've been lingering. I'm trying different forms of that right now. As far as just general metagame play, I'm starting to grow attached to it. I'm starting to kind of understand where it's coming from and understand its potential. So I'm liking Latveria myself. What about you, Tom? Where are you sitting right now?
I mean, the thing that most interests me right now is the, form the new Fantastic Four mechanic, just because it's bright, shiny, and new, and it also addresses one of my favorite things, which is flexibility within the setting of the individual game. That's why I love that card so much, and so I'm really excited to play with it. I have to be honest, I don't think anything about it yet is able to stand against a well-designed Jason team. Prime Batman teams are still pretty hardcore and hard to deal with. Obviously, oppressive Tricentennial shenanigans are powerhouse, and there are a number of things I think that do better, but I'm most interested in it. So apropos of our present conversation, that's kind of where my head's at. Though I'm also kind of in JLA land as well, because I really like a lot of the JLA pieces in this almost infinite combinations.
Mike, I'd ask, but I'm going to share something on the screen there for everybody, and keep your face on there. You shared this in the community group, so he loves you.
Love me. Well, the one drawback to Skrulls, obviously, in terms of the team event, is the Highlander. So I can't really have the fun with Skrulls. I've actually made the 300-point Skrull team that I tried out yesterday with Emily. That I may. We'll see what happens. I might try it in the singles event, or I might save it for that Worlds event in October. I'm not sure which. I really enjoy playing it. It's a lot of fun, and I think certain teams are going to just completely ruin it, and other teams are going to get completely owned by it. But in terms of teams, I can't use it because there were like a whole bunch of Skrull infiltrators on it and multiple Super Skrulls, and I can't use it because of Highlander.
You can keep it general, though, not necessarily for the teams.
Well, I made another Skrull team that actually fits into the Team Worlds build because I love Skrulls so much. I had to try and see if I could do something with it, and it might have some potential. It's not quite as juicy as the other one. I also have been looking at, like Tom said, the new Fantastic Four build mechanic. That is really fascinating to me. It's actually a really different way to build. I'm finding it's almost like its own elaborate puzzle. So I'm actually in the process now of making a list of every single one of these Fantastic Four keyworded figures into blocks of point values, and I've started doing almost like a flow chart of elaborate equations to figure out how to switch from this team to this team to this team to this team.
My spreadsheet is in the other window.
Yeah, I haven't got to the spreadsheet part. It's mostly up here right now and on some sticky notes and on windows that are open on my iPad. But it's feeling a bit like a Beautiful Mind thing, you know? Like it actually is really elaborate when you really dive in, man. It's a deep well of building that I have not been in. So I don't know if I don't feel like I'm going to be able to come up with the right thing through that in time for any of this. So that's sort of more like a dream project. I'm ultimately I'm of the mindset of really what my brothers in arms here end up telling me that they're leaning towards to sort of make the final decision of what I should look at. But probably, might as well probably try Skrulls. I don't know. Like, it feels like, why not? I think we're in this to have some fun, so why not? And then we'll see people try and figure out whether Skrulls are in A, B, or C. Mm-hmm. I'll just tell you this, if you don't ignore hindering. Oh, sorry.
Also, your dad did say he did not mean to trigger you, Mike.
Oh, I'm so triggered. Especially because he called me right before this podcast happened. So it's odd that now you're also in the chat, Dad. So, hey, enjoy golf tomorrow.
All right. Next up, Sleepy Cat Zero. Question: how does the meta shift after Fantastic Four? One thing I am noticing with this set, my big observance, is this set, it doesn't seem as vulnerable to, like, a lot of what's good in the set does not seem as vulnerable to the Black Widow problem as a lot of sets tend to be. Especially if you compare, like, the 300-point God Emperor Doom to the 300-point Starter Set Doom. Starter Set Doom's special powers on his stop clicks aren't going to do you a whole lot of good other than just be the stop clicks. It seems that there's a lot more going on dial than there is in most sets. That's been my observance so far. There may be there might be some higher tier figures that I might be missing because a lot of what I've been looking at is wearing green. So it's hard to keep my focus at other things. But there's a lot going on in the set that I think is very easy to overlook. But then when you start to put all the pieces together, really start to shine. So it's one of those sets that's probably better to experiment with. But if I was to say what's going to immediately affect the metagame, keep your eye on that Prime Ghost Rider. He's going to be up there for sure. And, combinations with the Doombots and Valeria, or sorry, not Doombots, Valeria in conjunction with some of the Mandarin rings is going to be a massive threat in the game, for sure. Especially when you consider the ruling on Valeria, where if you knock back somebody past Valeria, but within the 4 squares of her line of fire, every square they go through will deal a damage.
Penetrating
damage.
Penetrating damage.
So,
yep.
yeah.
That's why it's really great that things like knockback attacks require line of fire, and Valeria requires line of fire.
Yeah.
Oh, stealth is king.
Tom, any thoughts? There's something I haven't mentioned, but I know somebody who's going to mention it.
Well, you go ahead, Mike. I don't want to steal your thunder on this, and depending upon where you go with it.
What? Where am I going with what? I don't know what you're talking
He
about.
loves you, Tom, Mike. Feel free to talk about him.
Yeah.
I love Skrulls. Of course I love Skrulls. I just think that this set overall, like, someone's really would have to sit down and do the numbers and crunch the numbers and statistically look and see how many of these figures are popping up to really see the impact, right? I mean, that's the fairest way to understand an impact of a set is how many of these figures are being used and popping up in teams within the short term. It does feel like it's an awkward situation because of what's happened with when the timing of COVID happened and all that. I think it also skews it. I don't think JLU got really enough play of any kind, online or otherwise, to highlight it. But comparatively, I feel like JLU was almost like a couple of figures in the main set and the chases. Versus this set feels like the chases and a whole bunch of stuff at different rarities, you know? Like, I could be wrong, but I don't know. I feel like this set actually has a lot of impactful meta. And something Jason mentioned is, I've noticed as well, that the Black Widow thing, like, it feels almost like, well, I mean, of course they knew the figure was coming out, but this set feels like, yeah, okay, everything leading up to it, here's Black Widow. Black Widow's going to take advantage of everything leading up to it. Now that we know Black Widow exists, here's a whole bunch of special powers that don't actually give standard powers, so her thing doesn't affect that. I don't think that was not partially intentional.
Tom?
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, to be fairly specific, there are two things around this set that I think really immediately impact the metagame. One is actually Skrulls. I know we make a lot of fun of it because Mike loves it so much, and so it's fun to keep levity about that. But I actually think that they are more viable than anyone's giving them credit for, not just because Mike's good at them, but I think there are other people who've made that observation as well.
Well, I was saying earlier, the Super Skrull is going to make some noise.
For sure. And especially in conjunction with the Prime one, which goes a long way for its own purposes, and the Skrull General is it that makes it so that once the shape change shuts your whole team down? Like, that triplicate is the starting point for some incredible building. And in fact, so is just 4 Super Skrulls, a General, and something else. You know, like, there's a lot of different...
Silver Surfer. That would be exactly 300 points.
Yeah, there you go. The other thing I would point out, which is annoying, is the Dr. Fantastic, specifically because you can team him up with Jason Wingard, and then because he's not unique, you can also have one on your sideline, so you create a Galactus Pog at any given moment with Wingard's effect. So you have a kind of a permanent, easy access to a Pog that has a 10 range, 12 attack, 5 damage with 20D impervious and Pulse Wave. That is the most overwhelmingly powerful Pog, and yes, it does mean you have to put Dr. Fantastic on your team, but he's actually pretty good.
He's really good.
Really good, especially with his trait. And considering you can activate the Wingard effect twice, then you obviously at any given time have a max 1, but even once your opponent figures out some way of dealing with their Franklin Galactus, then you just make another one. And it's a very difficult thing to get around. So, you know, it's on my mind at the moment just because of the fact that it's as puissant as it is, and I know a lot of people are talking about it. So that's the immediate impact.
Scott Crampton just won Ohio state championship using Dr. Richards there, and Franklin Pog and Jason Wingard, but he also had Vulture on there too.
Of course he did.
He loves that Vulture, man. He's hooked.
And he also gave it the Doc Ock arms.
Yeah, totally. Just totally hooked. But so clearly it's a strategy, and clearly it works. So yeah, definitely not Dr. Fantastic.
For sure. Like, as oppressive as Black Widow is, she's not a 12 attack pulse away with 5 damage, or just sits 10 squares away and hits you for 5 damage with their 12 attack for fun.
On a zero-costed Pog.
On a zero-costed Pog. Yeah. Like, she's good, but she's not that good.
I hate this next question.
Go for it.
Is it worth buying a God Emperor Doom for competitive games? No. Unless you have a very specific team, don't make the investment. But if you really want a God Emperor Doom, then you want a God Emperor Doom.
I think should eliminate the word worth.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is ever worth it in this game? Here's the thing. I think God Emperor Doom is going for an awful lot of money, and even I know that, and I couldn't be more disconnected from the value of figures for the most part, but even I know it's going for a crazy amount of money. Given the fact that it has no immediate niche within the competitive game, like that, it's not going to say it never could. I'm not going to say it isn't, a high tier figure. It is. But it's not one of the. When I said earlier, like you might pick the 20 figures to build around. I doubt I'd even make my 20. So don't pay $200+ for it.
Yeah.
What I would say is, this is the perfect time to try Roll20.
Yeah.
Play the figure on the team you want to build on Roll20. Play it a whole bunch of times. If it doesn't work or you don't like it or whatever, you've answered your question about whether it's worth spending the more money. If you like it, if you love the figure and you're like, yes, this is the team and I want to play this team and I must play this team, and you've got that money to spend, like you don't have a car you got to fix and whatever, sure, go for it. Why not? Like,
yeah,
absolutely. Right. But your smartest approach is, I've been down this road before where I got excited about a figure and I was like, yeah, I'm willing to spend the money on the figure now. I have the money there. I'm going to put it on this team. I think I tried it on the team one time and I went with some other build. And I don't regret the purchase. I got the figure. I knew what I was getting into and I was cool with it. But if my whole purpose was, I'm going to spend $200 on this chase figure because it's so good and I'm going to put it on the team, and you try it one time and that team doesn't work, I mean, you now feel trapped. Like, I've got to build with God Doom now. I just dropped $200 on him. I got to make this team work.
Yeah.
Don't pigeonhole yourself like that, man.
Yeah. It's really hard for me to turn around and tell somebody spend $200 on a figure. I can't do that. That's not. But God Emperor Doom is currently falling under what I like to call the Thanos effect. Every time a Thanos is released in this game, on the secondary market, he becomes worth more than he deserves to be. We saw this with the giant, or the 2x2 base in Avengers Infinity. Like, he was going for $50+ at a rare value. The $20 rare that was in Guardians of the Galaxy. The $15 common prime. It was a good figure, don't get me wrong, but it's a common prime.
Let's be honest. Like, it's awesome, but it's not just awesome for the competitive game. The competitive metagame isn't necessarily the only or even the biggest factor that pushes values, is what Jason, I think, is getting at.
Yeah, exactly.
People want God Emperor Doom. So, makes sense, and I can understand that too. I was super happy when I pulled one. Like, I pulled 2 chases. One was Franklin, and one was God Emperor Doom. One of them will see regular play. The other one I was happier to have in my booster, and that was God Emperor Doom.
Yeah. Also, one of the, like, either God Emperor Doom or Valeria or Franklin or Sue leads you down a path that makes you want all 4 of those. I'm sorry, it's unavoidable. So brace yourself for that, because they are playable as a 300, 400, or 500 point team.
Yeah, that's almost what happened to me. Thankfully, it's not God Emperor Doom.
Yeah.
Sue Storm, by the way, anybody? Sue Storm, hit me up if you got a Sue Storm.
Next up, Gerard Winnie. What do you guys think of the 1220 builds? I believe, what is it? I believe the 1220 is what you were talking about in regards to the Dr. Richards, Jason Wingard, brings out your 12 attack, 20 defense Pog.
Oh, that's considered the 1220.
I believe that's the 1220.
Well, you're right from the perspective that those are his numbers.
Yeah.
What do I think of it? I wish that the figure was unique, and feel like maybe that was an oversight.
Yep.
But hey, it's legal. It's out there. You got to deal with it. I've been playing this game too long to get too emotional about design decisions that I don't personally agree with. I guess I'm. So as a result of that, then it's out there. I don't love the fact that it is, but I still like the game, so I'm going to have to deal with it.
Mike?
Jason Wingard didn't need any help. Really is how I feel about the whole thing overall.
He was doing fine on his own.
Yeah, really. I mean, like Tom said, it's a build. It's the game. The elements are out there. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who ever thought about Jason Wingard didn't immediately think of him again when we saw Dr. Fantastic here, because clearly he makes free pogs, and here's a ridiculous pog. So yeah, it's a build, and it does stuff, and Jason didn't need help, so I'm completely, I don't.
It may be because I never pulled him or never acquired him. Jason Wingard is my least favorite of the bystander makers. That's just me. But that said, it's a team. I'm on Tom's. It's a team that exists. It's cool. It's a strategy. It is what it is, man. It is what it is. All right. Next up, question: which one do you feel is more undercosted? Firelord at 40 or the Wolverine at 75? I believe we're talking about the Fantastic Four Wolverine, the super rare. He's neat. I don't think either of them would fall under undercosted in my opinions, though, because the Wolverine, he's 75 points to your build. He can continuously come back as long as you have figures, or as long as they have like Fantastic Four characters. So that could get pretty obnoxious. He's got some staying power. But I wouldn't for what he does at 75 points. The game starts at range, so it's hard to say. I personally don't call him undercosted, and I don't call the Firelord because he's 40 points for 3 clicks. It's just a good 40 points for 3 clicks, personally. So I wouldn't call. If one were to be more undercosted, 75 points that don't die is pretty damn undercosted. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I don't think either of them is truly undercosted, but the question is which one's more undercosted does not necessarily mean that we consider them undercosted per se. I would agree that Wolverine, because of his staying power. I mean, normally I wouldn't say that about a 75-point figure versus a 40-point figure, but Wolverine in the right situation is pretty hard to take down.
And Tom has that smug look on his face where he's about to call us both idiots.
No, you're not both idiots. Like, what I was going to say is, like, this is a rhetorical question because I know there is no answer. Like, what is the appropriate cost for a piece that does not die? Really, ever, because it's unlike unlike any piece that we've seen since like Dead Man and Resurrection Man. Like, this piece really doesn't get KO'd unless something happens around him. So it's my answer would also be Wolverine, but it's because of the fact that I don't know how you rate that cost. It's like the Faust problem. Like, was Faust undercosted? I think Faust was ill-advised.
Yes,
but I'm not sure that it was undercosted. And similarly, if Wolverine starts to tear up the game in some way, I think it will be because that design decision is ill-advised, not because 15 or 20 more points would have been the difference maker. So here's what I would say. I think Firelord is undercosted, and I think Wolverine is potentially ill-advised. But as for which one has the greater potential to be meaningful to the game, Wolverine is the answer.
Also, never mind. I was going to say something and I completely forgot what it was, which defines it as not important at all. All right, I think that covers it in the chat. Thank you everybody watching in the chat. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mike, for joining me today. It was much appreciated. If you want to support us directly, check us out at patreon.com/marriedwithclix. All of our patrons are wonderful people, and I love all your support. You're awesome. Thank you very much. Also, check out our sponsor, majesticccg.com/apex-insiders. Or just go straight to their site and click on the link to the Apex Insiders. There it is down below on the bottom right. right. It's also in the description. I got a nice little icon on there for you. It's your one-stop source for all things Heroclix, and it's got some of the great minds contributing to it. So check that out. And it's a great site to be a part of. We actually, this is run by Patrick Yaboko, who Mike mentioned earlier in the conversation. So he's a great guy in charge of it, and he's really passionate about the Heroclix community more than anything. So, with that said, guys, things are starting to get a little better out there, but not perfect out in some places. So be careful if you are going to get out there. But if you are going to get out there and you have some ideas for teams, if it's on Roll20 or if it's in person, get some practice, because practice will make your teams better. Have a good evening, everybody.